Hey guys, it's Sarah. Today is BookList Thursday, and this is a video series I do with my friend Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library. And every Thursday we bring you some sort of list that we want to talk about with different topics. This week, in the theme of Nonfiction November, which a lot of booktubers do, they take the month of November and try to read some nonfiction, or at least more than they would normally read. So we thought it would be fun to share with you our top books that are nonfiction, but they read like fiction. So they are nonfiction books about actual things, actual events, actual people, but when you're reading them, you feel like you're reading a fiction novel because it's written that well and the stories are that good. So that's what we're going to be sharing today. I am going to start off with a memoir, and that is American Sniper by Chris Kyle. Oh my goodness, this book. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I don't read a ton of nonfiction. I don't. It has to be either about somebody who I'm really interested in, or it needs to be a topic that I'm very interested in. And this one, I'm definitely was interested in Chris Kyle and his story. I did read this after he passed away, and it's just his experiences are described so vividly. I felt like I was there, and I did not want to be there. We're talking middle Afghanistan. He's a sniper. And the things he talked about and the things he described were so scary. I can't imagine volunteering to go into that, because he did. He volunteered multiple times to go to a war zone and to be there and be in the middle of the action. Because he did that, and because he was so good at what he did, you know, he is, I think, still on the record as the deadliest confirmed sniper hits. Like, it's still him. He was very good at what he did. He took out a lot of guys who were really wanting to hurt other people all over the world. And just his courage and his commitment and everything was so admirable. You also see him struggle with his family. You know, his wife didn't love that he was volunteering to go all the time. It's really hard on a family when one person is gone for that long and they're in a really tough situation. We've been there. So it's taxing. It really is. It takes a strain. And I just admire them. I admire their marriage. I admire the strength that both of them had. And the book is fantastic. The movie is also fantastic. But if you've ever thought about reading that book, I definitely recommend it. The next one is a book that I just read recently, and that's Columbine by Dave Cullen. And this follows the events of the Columbine high school shooting, which happened in 1999. And this one was very informative. I feel like I learned a lot. I also learned that we will never know the full story of this. We can only piece together the evidence that was there, the evidence that was collected, the evidence that was on videotape, eyewitness accounts that are not always reliable, unfortunately, but that's definitely true in any type of tragic situation. But we will never know, because the shooters are no longer alive. They killed themselves. And so we're never going to get that. And there were not, you know, cameras following them around as they were doing all these things, and we'll never know the full actual timeline, which is frustrating, I think, for our society, because we live in such a society where we want to know all the information right away, all the time, to a point where, you know, we have news organizations that do nothing but speculate on what could have happened, you know, which just fuels things that are not true. And he talks about that in here too. He talks about, you know, reporters and news and journalists who got some things right and journalists who got some things wrong, and, you know, how that happens and why that happens. I thought that was very interesting. And it's heartbreaking. I know this story. I've known it, you know, ever since it happened. I remember watching about it and, you know, reading all the articles that were coming out right afterwards. And it's very sad. It's very sad. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Definitely reads like a fiction. This one is a true crime book, and that is The Fact of a Body. And this is by Alexandria Marzano-Lesnevich. And this was written by Alexandria, and it's her experience as a lawyer. She is a defense attorney, I believe. She is very much against the death penalty. However, she ends up being put on a case that is kind of being set to retry. And It follows a man who is accused and who admitted to killing a young boy and, doing very bad things to this young boy before he killed him. Now, this follows Andrea's story because a lot of things from this case brought up memories for her from her own childhood, which were so sad. And she's seeing a correlation between the case she's working on now and what happened in her own life. And it's making her question whether or not she supports the death penalty now. It's like it was that traumatic and had that much of an impact on her. So we are following the case. His name is Ricky Langley. He is a real person. This case is this is a nonfiction, so I don't know why I'm explaining it, but it's a nonfiction book. But Ricky Langley, he did do this, and I believe it was in Louisiana. And he had issues with, getting urges to want to do things to children, sexually and hurting them. And it really goes into the evidence that is there of him trying to get help for himself. He did not want to be this way. He was trying to fight it. He was literally got to a point where he had someone drop him off at a mental institution and walking in and saying, I want to do these things. Can you help me? Okay. My frustration with this is nobody helped him. Nobody helped this man. They basically said, if you haven't done anything, we can't do anything for you. We can't put you in the system if you haven't done anything. Like, he has to go out and hurt somebody for you to actually take him seriously. What is going on here? And that was the most frustrating part of this book for me. I was like, he is literally crying out for help. I'm not defending him in any way, shape, or form. What he did was awful. But it did make me feel like the system really, really let him down as well. And I feel like a child died because the system let him down. You know what I mean? Obviously, they can't put him in jail for not doing anything just because he has urges, but he could have gotten some mental health to help him try to cope with it. And if it got to a point where he still didn't feel like he could cope with it, do something. There has to be something. So that frustrated me so much. When you see someone crying for help and they don't get the help that they need, it drove me nuts. Okay. That aside, this definitely goes back and forth between the Ricky Langley case and then Alexandria's experience as a child. And what she experienced was completely awful as well. And, you kind of see the reasoning behind her mental struggle with all these things. It was really good. Really, really good. I did enjoy the part about Ricky more than I enjoyed the things about her childhood, but it was definitely important, to see the correlation between the two. And this was fantastic. It really took me by surprise. I thought it was going to be good, but I didn't realize I was going to love it so much because I gave this 5 stars and it was just fantastic. Another nonfiction book that definitely reads like fiction is Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. This is a biography about a man named Louis Zamperini, and he was a soldier in World War II. He had a very interesting life. So you follow him basically from birth up until, he went through what he went through in the war. And he was even an Olympic runner. Like, he was in the Olympics. And I think that was in the 40s, before the war for sure. And so that was very interesting. He even met Hitler, met him, I think, and shook his hand. And this was before Hitler started doing all the crazy things he was doing. And, we really realized what an enemy he was. But it follows his story because he was a pilot, I believe, or he worked on the air crew of a plane. I can't remember if he was the pilot or not, but he was on an aircraft and it crashed over the Pacific, and he ended up surviving that plane crash, but he was picked up by Japanese soldiers and he was held as a prisoner of war for years. And the things that they did to him, I would not have survived. And the things that they did to him were so heartbreaking, and it was relentless. I literally don't know how he survived all that. I don't know how. He probably didn't know how, but he did. He survived it. And, you get all of his accounts from this and just, oh gosh, I can't believe what he went through. And he actually died a couple years ago, I believe. Louis Zamperini did. I think it was right around the time when the movie adaptation of this came out. He was still alive when they were making that movie, and so he had a lot of input into it. But he was an amazing person. Just his bravery and his perseverance was definitely admirable. This book, I did not expect to love it, and I loved it. Loved it so much. It's fantastic. Okay, last one. You ready for this? Oh, gosh. Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow. So, story time. I read this a while after it came out, but I read this when Hamilton was coming out, the musical. And, you know, I was one of those who was listening to the soundtrack and I loved it. This is so great and original and blah, 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 blah. And I want to know all the things about Hamilton. And so my husband got this for me for Christmas along with the soundtrack, the actual soundtrack to Hamilton. And I read this pretty soon after he gave it to me, actually. And it's fantastic, you guys. I really enjoyed this. I was expecting to enjoy it. I wanted to read it, but it was a little bit intimidating. I mean, this is a really, really long book, and it's a history book, not something I would normally gravitate towards. But oh my gosh, I really enjoyed it. Ron's writing is fantastic, and it made it relatable. Even the opening of the book had me kind of giggling, and I was like, this is going to be good stuff. So I really like the way he wrote it. He wrote it in a way that is very readable and very relatable, and it made me understand history, which, let's be honest, can be hard to do. It can be hard for me to understand those things, especially when it's like a political history. Alexander Hamilton was scandalous. This man had some drama happening around him. He had people that hated him. Well, he was a politician. So, I mean, that hasn't changed, right? But he definitely made friends and enemies of a lot of people. He made enemies of some pretty big people. We're talking Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Aaron Burr, obviously. And he also had a lot of people on his side, like George Washington. And it was very, very interesting to see all those people, you know, around him and how people work together and how they worked against each other. And you go through wars and battles and all these things and political elections and mistresses. And yep, I was very disappointed in him quite a few times on that note, because, you know, you have Mariah Reynolds and all that in here. And I was very upset with him for all that. But I think like his affair with Mariah Reynolds and how that all came about and the blackmailing and all that, and it came out, and that was kind of the first political sex scandal, basically. And yeah, so who knew there was so much drama and all that stuff. I still can't believe they used to duel the way that they do, and just like, really, is this worth shooting somebody over? It was crazy that they settled arguments that way, like somebody could die. But yeah, this was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. If you're into audiobooks, the audiobook was actually really good too. I went back and forth between reading and doing the audiobook. It took me a while to read it because it is a very long one. But another story time, for my 40th birthday, my husband arranged a trip to Boston, Massachusetts for us for a weekend. And we went and saw Hamilton because it was touring there. And I'm still kind of on a high from it because we just went. And yeah, it was absolutely incredible. It was incredible. And just, you know, the dignity that they brought to it as well was really amazing. And the actors were just top notch. It was so, so good. I loved every second of it. I ended up bawling my eyes out towards the end, and it was a beautiful experience. So loved it. One of the best things I've ever seen in my life. I'm not even kidding. And just has still kind of sparked that interest in, you know, these people in this time period. And I kind of want to read more now and, you know, all that stuff. But it was absolutely incredible. If you ever get a chance to go, I highly recommend it, obviously. And it was amazing. But he was an interesting character. he was. He's not what everyone thinks he is. So, little scandalous going on in here, but it's fantastic. Even though it's a history book, loved it. Okay, guys, that is it for me today. Make sure you go and check out Lindsay's channel and see what she talked about. I'm really interested to see if she had any of these on her list as well. Let me know down below if you guys have read any nonfiction, but it reads like fiction. You feel like you're reading a novel, but it's a nonfiction book. I want to know what some of your recommendations are down below. All right, that's going to be it for me. Hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you again soon. Bye.